In the annals of human history, empires rise, conquer, and fade into memory. Some are immortalized in stone, gold, and legend. Others, despite their immense power and influence, remain shadows in the past, whispered only in a fragment of ancient texts and scattered relics. This is the story of one such civilization, a society so advanced, so powerful, and yet so obscure that even the most learned historians often overlook its existence. Today, we journey into the lost world of civilization that dominated its era, a civilization that reshaped the world around it, and yet has been almost entirely erased from the story of history. Imagine a land where innovation outpaced imagination, where cities rose with astonishing precision, and where armies marched with discipline that would rival even the great powers of Egypt and Mesopotamia. This civilization thrived in a region that today might seem unremarkable, tucked away in valleys, plains, and river systems that sustained their people for millennia. Their influence stretched far beyond their borders, shaping trade, culture, religion, and technology in ways that would echo across continents. Yet, despite its power, its name does not ring familiar in the classrooms of today. Unlike the pharaohs of Egypt, the kings of Babylon, or the emperors of Rome, this civilization slipped through the cracks of recorded history. Its monuments lie in ruins, often buried beneath layers of soil or hidden in jungles, waiting to reveal their secrets. Scholars have long debated the reasons for its obscurity. Was it deliberate? Did rival empires erase its memory? Or was it simply the inevitability of time, which swallows even the mightiest of human achievements? To understand the civilization, we must first travel back thousands of years, to a time when the world was a patchwork of emerging societies, each competing for resources, land, and influence. In this crucible of human ambition, this civilization rose with remarkable speed. Archaeological evidence reveals sprawling urban centers, meticulously planned with streets, drainage systems, and monumental architecture that rivaled those of contemporaneous empires. Their cities were not just functional. They were symbols of power, statements that communicated authority, sophistication, and control. But power is not measured merely by walls and buildings. This civilization excelled in trade, commanding vast networks that connected distant regions. From precious metals to exotic goods, their merchants travel hundreds, sometimes thousands of miles, forging alliances and influencing economies far beyond their homeland. Their mastery of trade allowed them to accumulate wealth, sustain armies, and fund monumental construction projects. It was an economic engine that made them almost untouchable in their prime. Yet, what truly set the civilization apart was its intellectual and technological innovation. Artifacts reveal advanced metallurgy, sophisticated tools, and a deep understanding of astronomy and mathematics. They could measure time with remarkable accuracy, plan agricultural systems that maximize yield, and construct buildings that endured centuries. In many ways, their knowledge rivaled or even exceeded that of the great civilizations more familiar to us today. Religious and cultural life in the civilization was equally complex. Temples, shrines, and sacred sites indicate a society deeply connected to its beliefs, with rituals and ceremonies that bound communities together. Artifacts suggest they were master artisans, creating sculptures, pottery, and artworks that reflected not only aesthetic sensibilities, but also deep symbolic meaning. Every object, every inscription, was imbued with purpose and significance, telling stories of power, faith, and identity. Yet, for all its accomplishments, the civilization was not invincible. Its history is marked by moments of conflict, upheaval, and struggle. Neighboring powers watched with envy, often attempting to challenge its dominance. Internal pressures, including political strife and economic strain, tested the resilience of its leadership. And then, as if the world had shifted overnight, the civilization began to fade. Cities that once pulsed with life were abandoned. Trade routes fell silent. Knowledge was lost. The reasons remain mysterious. A combination of environmental change, military defeat, internal decay, or perhaps a catastrophic event that reshaped the very land they had once mastered. Despite its disappearance, echoes of the civilization remain. Archaeologists continue to uncover evidence, piece by piece, reconstructing a narrative that had been buried for centuries. Each discovery, a shard of pottery, a fragment of a wall, an inscription etched into stone, provides a glimpse into a world that was sophisticated, resilient, and extraordinary. Every new find challenges our assumptions about ancient power, forcing historians to reconsider what it meant to dominate in the ancient world. As we explore the remnants of the civilization, we also uncover its lasting influence. Elements of their culture, technology, and ideas permeated neighboring regions. Their innovations were adopted and adapted, influencing societies that would later become more widely recognized in history. In many ways, though their name may be forgotten, their legacy is etched into the story of human progress itself. This is the paradox of the most powerful civilization you've never heard of. It reminds us that history is not simply a collection of names and dates. It is a tapestry woven from triumph, failure, innovation, and resilience. It teaches us that power can be both fleeting and enduring, that greatness is not always remembered, and that the human capacity for achievement is boundless, even in the most unlikely of places. Throughout this journey, we will traverse ancient cities buried beneath sands, navigate river systems that once sustained thriving populations, and uncover the secrets of temples, workshops, and fortifications. We will examine the artifacts, decipher the inscriptions, and listen to the stories that time has not yet fully silenced. We will meet kings whose ambitions shaped nations, warriors whose discipline made armies tremble, and visionaries whose innovations changed the way their people lived. We will witness the rise of society that, at its peak, stood as a beacon of civilization, rivaling the great powers that history has chosen to remember. And yet, as we uncover its secrets, we will also confront the fragility of human achievement. We will see how the forces of nature, the pressures of politics, and the inevitability of time conspired to bring even this mighty civilization to the brink of oblivion. Its collapse serves as both a warning and a lesson that no matter how powerful a society becomes, survival is never guaranteed and remembrance is never assured. By the end of this exploration, we will have traced the arc of a civilization that dominated its world, influenced its neighbors, and shaped the course of history in ways that are still being understood today. Though the world may have forgotten its name, its story endures, waiting for those who dare to seek it out, to reconstruct it, and to marvel at its forgotten greatness. This is a story of the most powerful civilization you've never heard of, a civilization that rose, flourished, and vanished, leaving behind whispers of its power, echoes of its achievements, and mysteries that continue to captivate the imagination of all who search for the lost chapters of human history. As we delve deeper into the heart of the civilization, we begin to understand not just its might, but the very essence of its people. They were innovators, visionaries, and survivors in a world defined by uncertainty. From their earliest settlements along fertile river valleys to the construction of monumental urban centers, they displayed a mastery of organization that was unmatched by neighboring societies. Streets were laid out with geometric precision. Public spaces, temples, and markets reflected careful planning designed to sustain a growing population. Their cities were more than habitations. They were symbols of control, pride, and the ambitions of rulers who understood that power is as much about perception as it is about force. Their rulers, often cloaked in ceremonial robes and adorned with intricate jewelry, were not just political leaders, but also spiritual figures. They claimed descent from deities, associating their authority with divine sanction. This blend of religion and governance created a society that was remarkably cohesive. Citizens were bound not only by laws but also by belief, by the idea that their civilization was chosen, protected, and destined for greatness. Priests held immense influence, overseeing rituals that connected the people to the cosmos, interpreting celestial movements to guide agricultural cycles, and predicting events that could alter the fate of entire regions. But this civilization was not isolated. Its influence stretched far beyond the boundaries of its homeland. Merchants traveled long distances along riverways, over mountains, and across deserts, carrying exotic goods, spices, metals, precious stones, and the civilization's ideas. Their trade networks were intricate and far-reaching, linking distant lands in a web of economic and cultural exchange. It was through these networks that their influence spread, introducing agricultural techniques, artistic styles, and technologies to regions that would later become major centers of power. In the realm of warfare, they were formidable. Armies were organized with discipline and strategy that often bewildered invaders. Chariots, cavalry, and infantry units operated in coordinated formations, while fortifications protected cities from sieges and raids. Battle tactics were carefully studied, and intelligence networks allowed rulers to anticipate threats. Inscriptions and artifacts suggest campaigns that were both offensive and defensive, aimed not just at expansion, but at securing trade routes, resources, and political stability. In their prime, this civilization could project power across vast distances, deterring rivals and shaping regional geopolitics. Art and culture flourished alongside power and commerce. Sculptures, murals, and textiles were not mere decorations. They were expressions of identity, history, and belief. Symbols, patterns, and motifs carried layers of meaning, conveying myths, legends, and moral lessons to the population. Music, dance, and storytelling were integral to ceremonies, festivals, and public gatherings, reinforcing community bonds, while also celebrating the accomplishments of rulers and heroes. Education, while limited to elites in many respects, was highly valued. Scholars studied astronomy, mathematics, and engineering, contributing to innovations that would endure long after the civilization's decline. Yet, for all its sophistication, the civilization faced challenges that would test its resilience. Environmental changes, shifts in climate, river courses, or soil fertility, threatened agriculture and the stability of urban centers. Political rivalries within the ruling elite sometimes escalated into violent conflict, weakening the state at crucial moments. And external threats, invading armies, competing trade powers, or nomadic groups, constantly loomed on the horizon. History tells us that even the most powerful civilizations can crumble under the weight of multiple pressures, and this one was no exception. The collapse, though not fully understood, was as dramatic as it was swift. Cities that had thrived for centuries were abandoned. Monuments and palaces fell into ruin. Knowledge, once carefully preserved in libraries, inscriptions, and temples, was lost or destroyed. Traders moved on, seeking more stable regions, and the web of influence that had connected distant lands unraveled. In the aftermath, neighboring civilizations sometimes incorporated fragments of this culture, adopting innovations in agriculture, military strategy, and governance, while the original creators faded from memory. Archaeological discoveries in recent decades have begun to shed light on this forgotten empire. Excavations reveal urban grids, advanced plumbing systems, and monumental architecture that rivals the grandeur of better-known civilizations. Burial sites uncover intricate jewelry, ceremonial weapons, and religious artifacts, hinting at a culture that valued both spiritual devotion and material mastery. These findings challenge long-held assumptions about the limits of ancient achievement, proving that the civilization's capabilities were extraordinary. What is perhaps most compelling is the civilization's enduring legacy. Even in its absence, traces of its knowledge and influence persist. Techniques in agriculture, metallurgy, and urban planning appear in later societies. Artistic motifs and religious ideas echo across regions. Its story, though obscured, reminds us that history is far more complex than textbooks suggest, and that power, innovation, and human creativity are not confined to familiar names etched into memory. In exploring the rise and fall of the civilization, we uncover lessons about resilience, ingenuity, and the impermanence of even the greatest human achievements. We see how the interplay of environment, politics, culture, and ambition can elevate a society to extraordinary heights, and how fragile those heights can be when pressures align against them. As we continue our journey, we will travel from the ruins of sprawling cities to the remnants of fortified citadels, from sacred temples to bustling marketplaces frozen in time. We will piece together the stories of rulers, merchants, priests, and artisans who built a society capable of awe-inspiring accomplishments. And in doing so, we will gain a deeper understanding not only of this forgotten civilization, but of the forces that shape the destiny of all human societies. By tracing the arc of the civilization, from its rise, through its golden age, to its sudden decline, we glimpse a history that challenges a conventional narrative. We learn that power is never permanent, that influence can outlast names, and that even when a civilization vanishes, its impact may ripple through generations. In the end, the most powerful civilization you've never heard of is not just a story of conquest and innovation. It is a story of human potential, ambition, and the enduring quest for greatness. And though much of its history remains hidden beneath layers of earth and time, each discovery brings us closer to understanding a world that once commanded awe, respect, and admiration, yet has been almost entirely forgotten. The civilization story begins long before its rise to power. Archaeological evidence suggests that its roots stretch back to small agrarian communities, scattered across fertile plains and river valleys. These early settlements were modest, yet their inhabitants displayed ingenuity and organization far beyond their years. They understood irrigation, crop rotation, and animal husbandry, creating stable food supplies that allowed populations to grow. Villages gradually merged into towns, towns into cities, and cities into a sprawling network of urban centers, each connected by trade, alliances, and shared culture. By the time their civilization reached maturity, it was already an engine of progress. Roads connected distant cities, enabling armies, merchants, and emissaries to move with remarkable speed. Rivers became highways for commerce, while ports facilitated trade with land hundreds, even thousands of miles away. Precious metals, exotic spices, timber, and textiles flowed along these networks, enriching the civilization and allowing to sustain monumental architecture, formidable armies, and sophisticated governance. Rulers emerged who would define eras. Some were visionary leaders, driven by ambition and intellect, while others relied on the divine authority claimed through lineage and religious sanction. Their courts were centers of power, learning, and culture, attracting scholars, artists, and architects. Royal decrees shaped laws, trade policies, and religious practices. It was a delicate balance of authority and innovation, a system that allowed the civilization to maintain cohesion while expanding influence. Military prowess was a cornerstone of their power. Their armies were meticulously trained, disciplined, and strategically advanced. Chariots and cavalry units executed complex maneuvers on open plains, while infantry fortified cities and defended strategic points along rivers and mountain passes. Leaders studied the terrain, the weather, and the psychology of their enemies, often anticipating moves before they were made. Inscriptions and battle relics tell stories of campaigns that extended the civilization's reach far beyond its heartland, bringing wealth, tribute, and prestige. Yet, power was not only enforced through warfare. Diplomacy played an equally vital role. Envoys and merchants carried gifts, negotiated treaties, and facilitated alliances. Marriage alliances were arranged between royal families and elites from distant regions, solidifying bonds that strengthened influence without a single sword being drawn. This combination of force and diplomacy created a civilization that was as respected as it was feared. Innovation was a hallmark of their society. From engineering and metallurgy to astronomy and medicine, their achievements were remarkable. Cities featured complex drainage systems, water storage facilities, and monumental buildings designed to last for centuries. Artisans crafted tools, weapons, and household items that reflected both function and beauty. Scholars studied the stars, creating calendars and predictive models that informed agriculture, religion, and governance. Medicine, though primitive by modern standards, displayed an understanding of anatomy and healing practices that saved countless lives. Culture flourished alongside power. Temples, palaces, and public spaces were adorned with intricate carvings, murals, and sculptures. Music, theater, and dance were integral to festivals and ceremonies, reinforcing social cohesion while celebrating achievements and victories. Literature and oral traditions recorded myths, histories, and lessons for future generations. Even the common people participated in the civilization's cultural life, learning trades, arts, and stories of heroes and gods that shaped their worldview. Yet, as with all great civilizations, challenges loomed. Environmental changes posed threats to agriculture and settlement patterns. Shifts in river courses, soil depletion, and climate variability tested their adaptability. Political rivalries occasionally escalated into civil conflict, threatening the stability of even the strongest rulers. Neighboring powers observed closely, ready to exploit weaknesses. In some cases, external pressures, invading armies, shifting trade routes, or nomadic incursions, tested the civilization's resilience. Then came the period historians call the twilight of this empire. Cities that had thrived for centuries were suddenly abandoned. Trade networks collapsed, monuments fell into disrepair, and once mighty armies disbanded or were defeated. The reasons remain a matter of debate. Some scholars argue environmental catastrophe, drought, flood, or famine crippled agriculture and forced mass migrations. Others suggest that political instability and internal strife eroded the foundations of governance. Yet another theory posits that a coalition of rival civilizations may have launched campaigns that gradually dismantled the empire from without. Whatever the cause, the civilization that had once commanded respect and fear disappeared almost entirely from the historical record. Even in collapse, traces persisted. Artifacts, inscriptions, and ruins survived, often hidden beneath layers of earth or obscured by dense forests. Modern archaeology has begun to uncover these remnants, revealing urban grids, monumental temples, fortifications, and tools that speak of society far more sophisticated than previously imagined. Each discovery challenges a narrative that the world's most powerful achievements are the ones most widely remembered. It is a stark reminder that history is selective, shaped by survivors, storytellers, and the accidental preservation of evidence. Trade routes that once spanned continents carried ideas and goods far beyond the civilization's original borders. Neighbors adopted agricultural techniques, architectural styles, and artistic motifs. Even as the empire faded, its influence endured, subtly reshaping societies that followed. In this way, the civilization's legacy, though obscured, continued to ripple through history, a testament to its ingenuity and reach. Today, as we explore the remnants of this extraordinary society, we uncover not only monuments and artifacts, but also the stories of individuals who lived, fought, and created within it. Kings and queens who commanded armies, merchants who crossed deserts and seas, priests who interpreted the heavens, and artisans who transformed stone and clay into enduring symbols, all contributed to a civilization that was at once powerful, complex, and remarkably human. This is the paradox of forgotten greatness. A civilization can dominate the world, innovate in countless fields, and shape the lives of millions, yet its name may be lost to time. Yet, in uncovering its story, we gain insight not only into its achievements, but also into the forces that govern the rise and fall of societies. We learn that power, though formidable, is fragile, that innovation, though brilliant, is not immune to the sweep of history, and that even the most powerful civilization can vanish, leaving only echoes, artifacts, and mysteries for future generations to uncover. As our journey continues, we will trace every facet of the civilization, its origins, expansion, culture, conflicts, triumphs, and ultimate decline. We will witness the ingenuity that allowed it to thrive, the ambition that drove its leaders, and the resilience that carried its people through centuries of challenge. And as we do, we will begin to understand why, even though the world may have forgotten its name, the civilization story is among the most powerful, the most instructive, and the most captivating of all human history. The story of the civilization is not complete without understanding the people who built it, the rulers, the visionaries, and the artisans who transformed ordinary life into extraordinary achievements. Among them was a king whose name has been partially preserved in inscriptions discovered deep beneath what is now dense jungle. He ruled during the civilization's golden age, a period of unprecedented expansion, prosperity, and cultural flourishing. Under his leadership, cities grew into sprawling urban centers, monumental temples were erected to honor the gods, and trade networks reached regions never before connected. This king was not just a warrior. He was a strategist, diplomat, and visionary. His armies were meticulously trained, capable of defending borders and projecting power hundreds of miles from a heartland. Yet he understood that brute force alone could not sustain an empire. He sent emissaries to distant lands, forging alliances and establishing trade agreements that brought exotic goods, precious metals, and rare knowledge into his cities. Markets buzzed with activity and artisans thrived, producing works that would endure for centuries. Religion and spirituality were deeply woven into the fabric of society. Temples and shrines dotted the landscape, often aligned with celestial phenomena. Priests observed the movements of the stars and planets, interpreting them to guide agricultural cycles, religious festivals, and even military campaigns. Legends speak of grand ceremonies in which kings, priests, and citizens alike participated, reinforcing social cohesion and linking earthly authority to divine mandate. These rituals were not mere superstition. They were a sophisticated blend of astronomy, symbolism, and social control that strengthened the civilization's unity and longevity. Trade was the lifeblood of the empire. Caravans traversed deserts, rivers, and mountains, carrying gold, silver, spices, timber, and exotic animals to distant markets. Ports along the rivers were bustling hubs of exchange, where goods from foreign lands were exchanged for locally produced pottery, textiles, and metalwork. The civilization's mastery of logistics and commerce allowed it to sustain large populations, fund monumental building projects, and maintain formidable armies. It was a system so advanced that rival civilizations often sought to replicate it, yet few succeeded. Military campaigns were frequent, though rarely indiscriminate. Strategic expansion, border defense, and the protection of trade routes were paramount. Inscriptions and artifacts reveal stories of generals who planned ambushes in mountain passes, naval fleets that control riverways, and elite cavalry units that could traverse vast distances with precision. Battles were not chaotic affairs. They were orchestrated, meticulously planned operations where discipline, timing, and intelligence often determined the outcome. Legends of these campaigns were preserved in oral traditions and ceremonial records, emphasizing the heroism, cunning, and sacrifice of those who served the state. Cultural achievements were equally remarkable. The civilization's artisans mastered metallurgy, creating tools, weapons, and ceremonial objects that were both functional and ornate. Pottery, sculptures, and murals depicted religious myths, daily life, and historical events, serving as both art and documentation. Music and performance were integral to society, with instruments, songs, and dances performed during festivals, rituals, and public ceremonies. Education, though often limited to the elite, was highly valued, with scholars studying mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and engineering. This intellectual foundation allowed the civilization to innovate in ways that influenced neighboring regions and left a legacy that persisted long after its decline. Yet, for all its brilliance, the civilization faced pressures that would eventually contribute to its downfall. Environmental changes, prolonged droughts, shifting river courses, and soil depletion challenged agriculture and threatened the stability of urban centers. Political rivalries occasionally erupted into internal conflict, weakening leadership at critical moments. And external threats, from neighboring powers, nomadic groups, and rival traders, tested the resilience of the empire. These pressures combined over time, setting the stage for decline. The collapse was complex and multifaceted. Cities that had flourished for centuries were abandoned, monuments fell into ruin, and trade networks disintegrated. Knowledge, once carefully preserved in libraries, inscriptions, and sacred sites, was lost or destroyed. Archaeologists today can trace patterns of sudden abandonment, evidence of famine, and destruction in key urban centers. The exact cause remains debated. Some argue environmental catastrophe, others internal strife, and still others a combination of factors. Whatever the reason, the civilization's disappearance was abrupt and dramatic, leaving only echoes in the archaeological record. Even in disappearance, the civilization's influence endured. Neighboring societies adopted its innovations in agriculture, metallurgy, architecture, and governance. Artistic motifs, religious ideas, and engineering techniques spread beyond the original borders, subtly reshaping the course of regional history. Though the empire itself was gone, its legacy continued, hidden within the cultures of those who survived. Modern archaeology has begun to piece together this lost world. Excavations reveal city layouts, fortifications, temples, and artifacts that testify to the sophistication of the society. Scholars analyze inscriptions, pottery, and relics to reconstruct its political structure, economy, and cultural practices. Each discovery provides a new glimpse into a civilization that once rivaled the great powers of history, but had been largely forgotten. The story of the civilization is a reminder that history is not merely the story of the victors or the famous. It is a tapestry of achievements, innovations, and human endeavor. Power can rise and fall. Greatness can be remembered or lost. Yet, through careful study, we can uncover forgotten chapters of human history, illuminating the brilliance of civilizations that shaped the world in ways we are only beginning to understand. And so, as we continue our journey, we trace the lives of rulers and commoners alike, of merchants and warriors, priests and artisans. We explore monumental temples and sprawling markets, battlefields and royal courts. We witness the ingenuity, ambition, and creativity that allowed the civilization to dominate its world, and the fragility that ultimately led to its decline. This is a story of the most powerful civilization you've never heard of, a civilization whose name may have been lost, but whose achievements continue to echo across time. By uncovering its story, we not only recover a lost chapter of human history, but also gain insight into the forces that shape societies the impermanence of power, and the enduring legacy of human innovation and resilience. As we explore the heart of the civilization, one cannot ignore the legends that shaped its identity. Stories of kings and queens who wielded power with brilliance and brutality, of generals whose strategies turned the tide of battles, and of artisans whose works transcended mere function to become symbols of cultural pride. These stories, preserved in inscriptions, oral traditions, and fragments of murals, give life to a society that has otherwise been almost erased from history. One such ruler, remembered only through scattered inscriptions, unified warring city-states under a single banner. His reign was marked by unprecedented building projects, monumental temples, fortified citadels, and sprawling palaces designed to awe both citizens and neighbors alike. Under his leadership, the civilization expanded its borders, controlled critical trade routes, and cultivated a golden age of intellectual achievement. Scholars of the era advanced mathematics, mapped the stars, and devised engineering marvels that would influence generations to come. Trade was the lifeblood of the civilization. Caravans and riverboats carried everything from exotic spices and metals to precious stones and finely woven textiles. Markets bustled with merchants from distant lands, exchanging not only goods but also ideas, technologies, and cultural practices. Through trade, the civilization's influence spread far beyond its borders, touching regions that would later rise to historical prominence. Its mastery of commerce ensured wealth, fueled monumental construction, and strengthened armies, creating a civilization whose reach extended across continents. Yet, power was never absolute. Rival kingdoms and neighboring empires watched closely, envying wealth and innovation. Military campaigns, while often victorious, exacted a toll. Armies marched across deserts, rivers, and mountains, and though victorious, they faced the constant challenges of supply, terrain, and morale. Defensive fortifications were constructed along borders, and elite units trained rigorously, blending strategy, technology, and discipline into a military machine unmatched by most of its contemporaries. The civilization's intellectual achievements were equally remarkable. Scholars studied the heavens, creating calendars and astronomical models that guided agriculture, religion, and statecraft. Physicians experimented with early forms of medicine and surgical techniques, improving the health and longevity of the population. Metallurgists and engineers crafted tools, weapons, and infrastructure with precision, leaving behind artifacts that continue to inspire awe. Artisans created murals, sculptures, and ceremonial objects that conveyed religious, political, and cultural narratives with sophistication and nuance. Religious life was central to society. Temples and sacred sites were not merely places of worship. They were centers of learning, governance, and social cohesion. Priests interpreted celestial patterns, presided over rituals, and advised rulers on matters of state. Festivals, ceremonies, and public rituals reinforced social order, linking the populace to shared beliefs and a sense of collective destiny. The blending of religion, politics, and daily life created a civilization both spiritually and practically cohesive, capable of sustaining a complex society across centuries. And yet, for all its achievements, the civilization faced existential pressures. Environmental challenges, drought, shifting river courses, and soil degradation threatened agriculture and food security. Political divisions occasionally erupted into civil strife, weakening central authority at critical moments. And external threats, from rival kingdoms and nomadic incursions to shifting trade alliances, constantly tested resilience. These pressures, combined over generations, gradually eroded the civilization's stability. The collapse, when it came, was both sudden and mysterious. Cities were abandoned, trade networks faltered, and monumental structures fell into disrepair. Archaeological evidence points to a combination of environmental, political, and possibly military factors that undermined the empire. Knowledge once preserved in libraries, temples, and inscriptions was lost, leaving behind tantalizing fragments for modern historians to interpret. The civilization, once mighty and influential, faded from memory, leaving only traces of its grandeur. Even in disappearance, the civilization's legacy endured. Neighboring societies adopted agricultural techniques, architectural innovations, and cultural motifs. Artistic styles, religious ideas, and technological knowledge spread to regions far beyond the original empire's borders. While its name may have been forgotten, its influence persisted, embedded in the development of civilizations that would later dominate the historical record. Today, archaeologists and historians piece together this forgotten story from ruins, artifacts, and inscriptions. Each discovery illuminates a civilization that, at its peak, rivaled the best-known empires of the ancient world. Through careful excavation and analysis, we begin to reconstruct not just the chronology of events, but the lived experience of society that achieved remarkable sophistication, resilience, and ingenuity. This is a paradox of the most powerful civilization you've never heard of, a society that reshaped the world around it, yet vanished from memory. Its rise and fall remind us that history is not a simple narrative of conquest and glory, but a complex tapestry of human ambition, innovation, and vulnerability. Power can be achieved, maintained, and lost. Knowledge can flourish and disappear. And yet, even when a civilization is forgotten, its impact can ripple across generations, quietly shaping the course of human history. As we continue to explore its story, we trace the arc of rulers and generals, merchants and scholars, priests and artisans. We walk the streets of cities now buried beneath earth and jungle. We peer into temples and workshops that once thrived with activity, and we uncover the ingenuity, ambition, and creativity that allowed the civilization to dominate its world. By the end of this journey, we will understand why. Despite its obscurity, this civilization remains one of the most remarkable achievements of the ancient world. Its legacy, though hidden, is a testament to human potential, to the enduring power of innovation, and to the mysteries that history still holds. This is the story of the civilization that rose to power, flourished beyond imagination, and then disappeared, leaving behind whispers, ruins, and a lesson in both greatness and impermanence.